According to the folks over at Fox and Friends, people being deported from the United States, even though they are protected by the United States Constitution, they should still, for some reason, not be given due process. Instead, we should just take the administration at their word that all of these people they've rounded up are just the worst of the worst, gang members, murderers, rapists, and just ship them out of the country, without having any kind of court hearings. So here's what happened. A couple days ago, Fox and Friends hosts Lawrence Jones, Brian Kilmeade, and Rachel Campos Duffy decided to let everybody in their audience know that we don't need the Constitution per se, right? Like, there are times when we should just totally ignore the Constitution. Here is how that conversation went down. It started with Lawrence Jones saying, quote, "The president is saying under the act, the Alien Enemies Act that he tried to invoke that of course has been temporarily halted by the judge, that you don't have to do this due process. You have a constitutional right that is actually they are afforded to illegals in this country. We should revisit that. But then you have a competing act that is saying, hey, if someone is part of a foreign terrorist organization, that you don't have to give them due process and they can't be deported." So before I get into some even worse stuff here, let's point out the fact that these are not illegals. They're human beings. Okay? Let's get the terminology right off the bat. Just referring to them as illegals is such a dehumanizing and disgusting thing to do, and that's why Fox News does it. They're not choosing these words because they're stupid. In fact, it's quite the opposite. They're doing it to convince their audience that these are not human beings. These are illegals. Not even illegal aliens, not even illegal immigrants, just illegals. Their existence is illegal is what they want you to think. And that is why that term is so disgusting. But then Brian Kilmeade chimed in after, Lawrence Jones said they don't need due process, they shouldn't be afforded the Constitution. Kilmeade said, quote, "I think that's a great point with your law enforcement background especially." Let me just stop right there. Law enforcement, a cop, yeah, enforce it. They're not the ones who interpret it, now are they? No, that's up for lawyers and judges and, the entire judicial system, which the law enforcement officers are not a part of. So let's make that crystal clear as well. But Kilmeade continues. "But I also think it's not practical to think that we can do due process on 8 million people. And Jones says, no. Campos Duffy says, that's right. And Kilmeade says, there's 22 million people here at a minimum, illegal already just in the last 3 administrations. And there are some people that got through with Trump's administration. If we are going to give every one of these guys a day in court and a lawyer, we can't do it. They don't deserve it. Our system doesn't need to be double burdened." So if you know the exact number of illegal immigrants here in the United States, right? If you know the number of undocumented people, then it stands to reason that we kind of have a good feel of where they are, right? So why didn't this happen earlier, right? You track down people that are here, and are not supposed to be, and you give them their due process. Like, hey, why are you here? Did you overstay a visa? What is it? Kind of seems like the government has kind of at least done a decent job of tracking where these people are to know where they are. So doesn't that beg the bigger question? Like, forget the constitutional shredding that Fox News is doing. Why aren't y'all asking the questions of if we know how many, if we know where to do the raids, why hasn't this been going on? It didn't happen, in the first Trump administration, right? See, the answer to that question is actually very simple. And it's, endearing, honestly. We don't do it because we need them. That's why. These people, these so-called illegals, as Fox calls them, they're contributing to our economy. They're contributing to our society. They're out there doing jobs that American workers will not do. We need them. That's why this has never happened. Yeah, there are plenty of folks in here, millions of them, I imagine, that we have no idea where they are, who they are, what's going on. But we do know that they are contributing. Do some bad apples get through? Absolutely. Just like some bad apples end up getting through and getting on TV, right, Fox and Friends? Some bad apples get through with police officers, right, Lawrence Jones? Bad apples get through in the medical profession, in the legal profession, in the teaching profession, and literally every single profession known to man. Does that mean we got to get rid of all doctors, all lawyers, all teachers? No, it doesn't, because that would be very dumb. Just like trying to ship 22 million people out of this country and assuming that that's not going to have any economic ramifications on the rest of us, because it damn sure will. Now, back to the shredding of the Constitution. The reason we have due process for these individuals, especially using the Alien Enemies Act, is because that act is only, as y'all actually pointed out, to deal with people that may have ties to terrorist organizations or other hostile forces against the United States. Doing due process would allow these people the opportunity to go into court and actually make the case that, hey, I'm not tied to a terrorist group. I didn't do any violence here. I'm not in a gang. I'm not a member of a hostile foreign nation. I'm just over here working a job. But you see, that undermines the claims of the Trump administration that all of these people are the worst of the worst. That's why they don't want due process. Not because, oh, it would take so much time. Hell yeah, it would take a lot of time. That's why things like this don't happen and we don't do it, because it's dumb. But also, if we did it, these people would have the opportunity to explain what happened and why they shouldn't be deported under the Alien Enemies Act. Here's a good point. We have already seen reports of people that have been, apprehended using the Alien Enemies Act because they're still allowed to apprehend. They're not allowed to ship them out because they allegedly had gang tattoos. Right? That's what the administration said. They had gang tattoos. Turns out, these people that with the gang tattoos, they were soccer tattoos. Due process, getting these people the opportunity to explain themselves in court, would have cleared that up. And you wouldn't have arrested these innocent people for allegedly being gang members. But y'all don't want to do that because then you get embarrassed. Then you get exposed. And then, God forbid, the American people learn that all of these undocumented people in the country are actually helping keep this country afloat. We need them. What we don't need is three jackasses sitting on the Fox and Friends couch telling us that we don't need the Constitution.
What are you doing? It's over. The video's over. I'm done complaining about everything, and that's it. The end. Leave. Well, okay, if you're going to stick around, maybe you should give us a like, a comment, a share, or just subscribe to stay connected with all of our content. Or maybe you should consider becoming a member for some exclusive content and perks. Just follow the link in the description. Now, go. Just go.